On this episode of Athletic Training Chat, we have Erica and Trevor Folker, who own and operate MVMT Performance and Rehabilitation. This is a really unique episode that Greg did in the fact that these are a couple of athletic trainers that own their own business and work in private practices, which is unique amongst itself. But they're also husband and wife, so that throws a whole nother added dimension in this. And so really Greg gets into the nitty-gritty of with them about what it's like to work with your significant other, and also just running your business and looking at cash-based options and different things that can be implemented with ATs, especially if you're looking to potentially go that route. It's becoming more popular, but we still have a long way to go in terms of it's just something new as athletic trainers are trying to figure it out. Great episode, super interesting. Really think everybody's going to enjoy it. All that being said, please check out Mueller Sports Medicine as they power this podcast and help us keep it going. A couple other things happening as we put this out the week of November 30th. The Advantage podcast is doing huge things, giving $100 for the next 25 days to athletic trainers in need. Please go check that out if you can help support, or you can nominate someone that you think could really use that $100 right now to help with whatever that may be, to help just get them through. Alicia Pennington is doing amazing work with that. It's super awesome to see, and we're happy to do whatever we can to help promote that and ultimately contribute to it as well. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode, and we'll talk to everybody later.
All right. Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Athletic Training Chat. Today we have some great guests for you. We're in the Green Bay area for this one with Movement, Performance, and Rehabilitation. So it's a private practice that is run by a husband and wife duo. So today we have Trevor and Erica Folker. And without further ado, I'll kind of turn it over to them to kind of introduce themselves, maybe talk about their credentials and education here.
Cool. I'll go first. Sure. All right. Well, I'm Trevor, and I've been practicing as an athletic trainer professionally now for 9.5 years, coming up on 10 in May, I believe. Did my undergrad at UW Oshkosh, and from there I worked in the high school setting for roughly 10 months. At the time, it wasn't for me, let's say. And decided to go back to get my master's degree, which I did at Concordia University, Wisconsin, where I also started as a GA for about 6 months, and then a full-time position opened up, and I applied, and I was lucky enough to do that. So I got my master's degree in applied exercise science, and I worked at Concordia until 2017.
Oh.
Yeah. So from there, I mean, I needed a change. I was a little burnt out. Erica was in the Green Bay area, and decided to move on up here. And I was in the industrial setting until this past March of 2020, and have a couple PRN roles just to help out a little bit here and there. But that's kind of my background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Erica. I originally started off as an athletic trainer, and I got my degree through Concordia University, Wisconsin. But I quickly realized that I enjoyed the evaluation and rehab process a little bit more than the on-field coverage. So that's when I went on to get my doctorate of physical therapy from South College, which is in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I've been practicing for a little over 2 years now as a PT. And we opened our private practice, over a year ago now.
Yeah, just over a year.
Well, That's exciting stuff, especially with a spouse partnership here. So
Yeah, it's
I guess,
unique, that's for sure.
yeah, we'll kind of dive into that too. So I
Yeah.
guess to start us off here, what's kind of the primary focus or goal of your private practice with the Movement Performance and Rehab Clinic?
Yeah. So I think it started, I mean, the whole basis is what it started is Erica's main goal. I would say one of her big goals was to one day open up her own practice. Um, and as an athletic trainer at the time, it's new. It's still not very talked about in the athletic training setting. So I wasn't even really aware that it was an option or an avenue that I could go down. And so it kind of just happened. She brought it
Yeah.
up, and at that same week, I had somebody ask me if I would see their wife for some shoulder injury, and he would pay cash. And so I was like, well, everything's kind of lining up. Why don't we just jump in and go for it? So we kind of started that. But
Yeah, I mean, I quickly realized working through PT clinicals in the outpatient setting, that's what I enjoy as orthopedic and sports medicine. And I realized there wasn't enough care that was being given to the more athletic individual. And, insurance is so very limiting. You can bill certain codes and, some things are paid for by insurance and some aren't. And there's so many hidden things that patients don't even understand about their insurance. And I knew that, with some people, it takes them 10 visits and they're starting to feel a lot better, but they're not quite back to the goals that they wanted to be at. So I knew that there was a break in care there. And so that's why when we talked and put our brains together, that opening a cash-based clinic was going to be a better, not only for us and our flexibility, but also for the idea of the patient too.
yeah, and I mean, just to piggyback off that, in the industrial setting, OSHA is the huge player. And, if you're working with workers' comp cases, the verbiage you use and just kind of your general language has to change so it doesn't turn into a recordable. And things that you're able to do and not able to do is kind of impacted by that. So it all boils down to feeling like we were doing a disservice to our patients and we weren't being able to treat them in the most effective way or the way that they necessarily deserved to be taken care of. And that's kind of the basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. That's something we've definitely, heard before on here, and, just talking to athletic trainers in general, it's kind of unfortunate that that's how things play out in certain settings. So it's great to hear that you guys are, doing well so far with that and kind of getting that freedom to pursue those avenues. So I guess we'll dive into maybe some of the challenges that you guys faced right away. I know you guys are cash-based, had to kind of build this client base right away. So what have some of those challenges kind of looked like for you guys?
Well, starting off initially, it was, I knew from a PT standpoint that I'd be able to do this because there's other PTs out there that are doing that, not only in the United States, but in Wisconsin. So I knew it was something that was doable, but also figuring out for Trevor, as an athletic trainer, is that something that he could pursue on his own as well. And we had to dig through the Practice Act and, go through the business side of things, which we didn't really know much about. I mean, we don't have a background in business and development. So this whole process has been a learning curve, learning how to market yourself, learning how to be somewhat of a salesperson, because, people are going to be held more accountable when they pay for better service versus just using their insurance as well. So, getting patients in front of you, but also, showing them why we're different and how we're different, but then them seeing the results as well.
Yeah. And I mean, as I'm sure you are probably aware from the athletic training side of things, there's a ton of hoops that have to be gone through in order to even start this. I mean, the whole physician signature thing is, having them to sign off on our practice and our scope just to make sure that we can actually legally do things. That was probably right off the bat. That was the biggest factor. It's how do we establish relationships with a physician, or I mean, even some chiropractors, and how can we get the ball rolling quickly, but legally? I mean, there's just so many barriers to go through to make sure you're doing things the right way. And we didn't want to get off on the wrong foot or just start things off the wrong way. So the biggest hurdle for me personally, being not a PT and being an athletic trainer, was to find that physician that would be open to signing off on my practice act in order to allow me to practice.
Sure. Yeah, I know that's kind of been a big topic this last week or two with kind of the NATA talks and stuff. And
yeah.
So yeah, it's unfortunate, and I know some people are really doing their best to advocate for, the private practice setting specifically. So I'm glad that worked out for you. I know that there's some stingy rules and whatnot, but you guys are up and running. So
that's the thing, is there's always a way. You just have to figure out what it is. Sure. There's going to be challenges at almost everything we've done. There's been some hoop to go through. So it's, if you believe in it and you think that it's going to be a benefit, you just do what you do to figure it out, do what you can to figure it out and make it work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I know you kind of just talked a little bit about, finding out how to market yourself and do some of the more business side of things. So I guess beyond your kind of daily treatment interventions as athletic trainers and a PT, what are some of your kind of daily tasks, weekly tasks in kind of that business side?
It is, what can we do to learn more about it?
It's never ending.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of, we were not taught anything like that in school, AT or PT. No. That's just not anything that you ever learn about. That has by far been the hardest part of all of this, is figuring out the business side of things, the marketing, the sales, like how to keep a book. I mean, we do bookkeeping, we do website. It's
website
just
development and advertising and networking is huge too. Yeah, just getting your face out in front of anyone and everyone.
That's been the biggest thing, especially, I mean, I'm not from this area. I'm originally from Milwaukee, so I don't really know. I don't have a big group of people that I know. So the way we've kind of tried to combat it is we listen to a lot of podcasts. We read a lot of books. And then we're part of some Facebook groups here and there that some PT ones, some AT ones, that also have individuals in the private practice.
Yeah, the biggest thing is finding other mentors too, to that have done this or even still newer, and you can learn from each other and even other small businesses. I would say if we're not in front of a computer figuring out things for advertising or marketing or updating a website, putting so much on social media, so much content out there, then we're out meeting with other people from other small businesses or in the healthcare profession, just making the connections in the Green Bay area, because right now a lot of what our patients are coming in from word of mouth referrals. So
we typically, I would say majority of the people we see are active CrossFit gym type athletes. And so you're just trying to get in front of their gyms or into their gyms by either through content, or we do a lot of workshops for local CrossFit gyms, just to show face, but to also give them, I think they're an hour long, and give them helpful tips and tricks on either mobility, warm-ups, basically anything that they want to workshop on, we'll figure out how to do it.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And, to hear that you guys are using those resources and how many of those resources.
Yeah,
that's
phenomenal. Incredible. So. It's so much. And I think we've kind of hit the limit as to what we can do. I think we're taking that next step where you're going to, I think, reach out to look into business coaching, because we spend a lot of time on things, but is it the right stuff? Is it going to be effective? Is it going to work? Not going to work? You try so many things, and take note of what has worked and what hasn't worked and just go off of that. So.
Yeah, well, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So far, what has been kind of your biggest successes or maybe kind of the most rewarding things about starting this private practice?
I'll start. I think the coolest thing for me has been the ability of, or just the knowledge to know that this is another relatively new avenue for athletic trainers to go down. Because like I said, it wasn't anything that I was really familiar with at the time, and that I even knew it was an option for me to do with my degree. And I think building off of that, just being able to set it up how we feel is most beneficial for our patients, because there's no restrictions. If we're seeing somebody for some random injury or some injury, but we also think that it might be some supplement that would benefit them, or some nutritional info that would help them, or just other avenues or resources, we can say that without any restrictions or anybody slapping our wrists. And I just think the whole outlook and the whole patient-centered atmosphere that we're trying to build it's awesome, and we can do it how we see works best. And I think that's the most, from my standpoint, when I sit back and look at it, from the athletic training side, I mean, everybody gets into it because they want to help people. I mean, that's the biggest goal, is how can we most effectively help our patients, our athletes, or whoever it is we're working with. And I think at the end of the day, this gives us the best option for that. Is that the right word? It just lets us do that most effectively. And to me, that's the biggest, most important part. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's just something that seemed like such a far off dream is now becoming a reality. And the reality is always changing. I mean, we never know what's going to happen with, especially this year with going on, but we take what we can and learn and grow from it and keep on moving along with the business. And
yeah, I mean, some of the testimonials we've gotten and the feedback from the patients is in the times where it's slower and where things don't always necessarily look up, or it's a struggle, it's always like, man, if we hear those good things, we know we're doing something right. And that's enough to kind of keep plunging through all those challenges that arise. There's something there. You just gotta ride it out, and there's gonna be highs, there's gonna be lows. You just gotta think of the bigger picture and what we're able to do with these people, or for these people.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
And I guess I was kind of, reading your bios and whatnot when you reached out. So I know under yours, or your name, Trevor, it mentions a lot about using kind of a functional movement assessment, primarily diving into that nutrition aspect. So I would definitely think that would play a role in kind of these great testimonials, because that's, I don't want to say an overlooked aspect of athletic training, but the fact that you get to sit down and kind of focus on that right away. What can you attest to that?
Yeah. So that I started to learn about that stuff during my time at Concordia. A colleague of mine was big into it, and he let me piggyback off of him. But like you said, that stuff isn't always seen in the athletic training room. People depend so much on modalities and passive ways of treatment, and that's just not, I gotta be careful, but I just don't think that's always the best way to go about things. And just being able to have the time to sit down with them one-on-one, watch how they move, watch their patterns. I mean, their overall patterns, you can tell basically everything you need to know about somebody if you watch a few certain specific patterns of movement. We've seen a ton of people that will come in who are told that they need surgery for a shoulder pain. And it's like, well, let's look at your overhead squat. Let's look at how you move. Let's see your painful position. Let's see if we can tweak it a little bit, and if it makes it better or not. I mean, and just knowing, like, are you putting your shoulder, I keep going back to the shoulder. Are you putting your shoulder in a locked and stable position while overhead, or are you kind of missing some of that end range external rotation and flexion, or are you, and if so, why? I mean, you always have to ask why. And that's another big factor and case in what I'm able to do through all that functional stuff. I mean, it really breaks it down, and people, I don't think necessarily realize or attribute or appreciate the fact of how something in your distal extremity, so like your ankle, can play a huge role in your hip or your low back pain. And people focus so much on the area of pain that they don't take in that whole big picture. So I think that's been the biggest thing for the people we've worked with, but also the biggest factor in why we've been successful is we're able to literally break down every single movement and then build on it. I think people, we lay out a pretty good plan, and they understand how we're going to go from A to B, and why we're working on breaking down the whole movement and working on like the segments. And I think that's something unique that isn't, like I said, isn't always seen in your typical athletic training setting. One, because of the volume, and two, I also think people become complacent a little bit and get too tied into the textbook and don't always venture out to see what else is out there. I think that's a big thing as well, is the textbook teaching gets you the degree and to pass that BOC, but it doesn't always cross over as much once you really start working with people. And I mean, obviously everything has its place and time, but I think people need to venture out a little bit more and get into some of that stuff.
Sure. And I guess, Erica, I was also reading your bio, obviously, and I know you kind of use that functional movement along with, it kind of mentions like some manual therapy techniques. And to me, that obviously sounds like athletic training, but I know that that's kind of typically more of a physical therapy approach. But would you say your guys' kind of day-to-day is similar in the clinic, or do you kind of focus on more of a hands-on approach versus a movement specific?
I would say if you had to give a little bit of a difference between our techniques, I think Trevor is a little bit more therapeutic exercise, and I'm a little bit more manual therapy, only because I've done so much continuing education in that realm as well, dry needling and cupping and joint mobilizations and manipulations and that sort of thing. But if I took anything away from PT school or just being a PT in general, and even in the research, it's manual therapy and exercise. You've got to mobilize the tissues or joints that need to be mobilized, and you stabilize the areas that need to be stabilized. And, you build movements off of that, right? So take a look at the person as a whole comprehensively, and then, get them on the table and figure out what's moving, what's not moving, fix those key things, and then reinforce it with a certain movement pattern, but then also have someone or that patient follow up with what they need to be doing at home. Because, I could work for somebody for an hour and that's great and they're moving pain-free, but does that mean it's gonna, stick? There's still a little bit of accountability on their part too, where they have to stick with some of the programming as well.
And that's something, there's so much overlap between the two professions. And that's why things can work so well if everybody worked together. I mean, if everybody in the medical field, I learn
from you all the time.
Right. And that's the thing. It's if everybody just worked together for the good of the patient, there's overlap, but there's things she's better at, there's things I'm better at. And I mean, there's other chiropractors, things that they can do that we can't do. I mean, it all fits into the model. It's just, everybody competes.
Yeah, that's unfortunately the case. I know
it really is, and it's too bad. And that's something we've tried to really complement each other well with. Erica being dual credentialed in both, she understands. I mean, it helps that she has that athletic training background. But going back to the administrative side of things, is we've really tried to systematize some of our work to make it a little easier. I mean, obviously the hope is to grow and scale, but she had some really cool evaluation I don't know, what's the word, documentation type stuff that worked really well to streamline things that I wasn't really aware of. And so we've implemented that. And then on my end, some of the functional movement stuff, the biomechanical stuff, we've implemented that. And then we take time weekly to go over that stuff and pick each other's brains and all that. So I just think it's a shame there's so much competition out there, because everybody can learn from everybody.
Yeah, sure. So I guess that kind of segues into my next question here for you guys is, what is it like working with your spouse every day? How does that kind of business relationship work out?
Should never have picked him as my business partner.
No, it's brutal. It's good. I'll be honest. It's probably harder for her because my brain never stops. It can be 9, 10 o'clock at night and I'll have some idea and I want to talk about it right away. But for her, she's able to distance herself a little bit better than I am, and turn it off. Where if I think of something, I got to talk about it. I got to write it down. Because I'll forget about it. I'll either forget about it or I'll just keep harping on her until she just gets annoyed.
Yeah, I think.
And then,
I think we complement each other pretty good. I mean, as you can tell, Trevor's like the big dreamer. Like he wants to do everything and anything he can, and they're all great. They're great dreams and great goals to have. And I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do to reach that? Like, what are the actionable steps that we need to take? And that helps because I lay out a format and then we attack it together. But living together, we're married. Like we have to we have to have a cutoff point. So at a certain time at night after dinner, we're done talking about business stuff. Like, let's just be us and not worry about that. But
yeah,
there's times we both get carried away because we want to pick each other's brains. But
yeah, I think one of the things that works is setting down that time specifically every week.
Yeah.
She thinks it helps. I don't know. my mind runs rampant. But yeah, every week we usually meet for at least an hour. Usually more, that we set aside just for business talk and looking at the upcoming week. I mean, we pump out a lot of content on our social media pages. So that is all talked about and planned. And then we batch the content in one go around. I mean, it usually takes multiple takes, but it's usually one go around. But yeah, I think that's been the biggest. That took a little getting used to. Starting this business. There's definitely a learning curve, but it's been good. And I mean, like I said, or like we've said, it's just if you take the opportunity to learn from each other, I've learned a lot from. She's smart. I mean, she's smart.
So is he.
So it works. It works well. And like I said, maybe I got to learn how to turn it off a little bit better. But
well, I mean, it sounds
like pretty easily.
It sounds like a very successful dynamic, and you guys are surviving COVID, so the business has to be very, very good. So I guess kind of last question here before we get into our AT Chat 5 would be, do you have any advice to athletic trainers, even physical therapists that are kind of looking into making that jump into starting their own private practice?
I think, like I said, it's a new avenue, and if there's some other athletic trainers out there that are doing it that have been pretty successful. And I think if you have interest in it from an athletic training standpoint, you just got to go after it. I think we can talk about this, but I think you just got to do it. Especially if there's a certain niche you want to work with, like the secondary setting is great. Maybe you have a certain sport or if you want it to be gymnastics or anything like that, reach out to a gymnastics club or a dance club or a soccer club or something like that and see how you can be of a benefit to them. Athletic trainers have such a unique skill set and are capable of so much that they just get locked into that secondary setting or that typical route. So I think the best thing is if you have interest in it, reach out to somebody that's doing it, or just jump in, learn about it, and figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, number one thing, mentorship, absolutely. Find other people that are doing it, like Trevor was saying, and learn from those people, and then you can piggyback ideas off of those people and learn from them. But yeah, you just got to do it. I mean, it started off as a side hustle for us, and now we just wanted to expand and grow it even more and make it, it's a different mindset when you have a side hustle versus an actual business. But you can absolutely start it off as a side hustle where if people are approaching you, hey, I'd like to work with you more on one-on-one, then it could start there and grow.
Yeah. And I would say the only other thing for athletic trainers looking into it is think of physicians that would be open to signing off on your practice act, or that you have good relationships with, and just build off of those, because obviously legally we need that still. And so that's going to be their biggest initial hurdle, is finding that. I think it takes some people. I got lucky with how it just kind of all came together at the beginning. But that's going to be the biggest initial hurdle, I think. And then just jump in. It's terrifying, but
yeah, well, that's great advice. I mean, it's people got to hear that. So
yeah.
So I guess if you guys don't have anything else about kind of your private practice, we might jump into the AT chat questions.
Cool. Sure. That sounds good.
Okay. So the first one for you is, where do you see athletic training going in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a big
all
one.
You got this.
That I have concerns, to be honest. I think an athletic trainer is needed. I think, like I was saying, a unique skill set. And I always thought that there would be a need for them. But if there's one thing COVID has shown me, it's that it's just places have gotten rid of their athletic trainers without thinking twice.
Right.
I mean, we have friends that are athletic trainers that lost their job within weeks of COVID. I mean, and there's been places that have eliminated their entire sports medicine department. So I think that's a big worry of mine, is we're still not seen as essential, or our benefit is still not seen by everybody. So I worry about athletic training as a profession in general. I still think there's obviously a need, and there's so much we can do. In the next 5 to 10 years, I think we might see, there's obviously a huge turnover rate. There's huge burnout rate. And salary is always a big talking point. So I've seen it happening slowly. I think physician extender roles are becoming more appealing to athletic trainers simply because of the Monday through Friday hours. I actually have a friend who I used to work with at Concordia, who is now kind of in that extender role, and they're not happy with it just because they're doing more scribing. So that, again, was just another point that I don't think athletic trainers are fully understood and what we can bring to the table. But I think professionally, I think we might see an uptick in people trying to go private practice or open their own clinic, simply because it allows them to dictate their own hours, to dictate what they do, what they don't do. And then compensation is a big factor in that as well. You get to set what you think you're worth. I mean, you get to set your costs, you get to do all that. And then in Wisconsin, we have the ability to submit for reimbursement.
That's huge.
And I think
that'll change the field.
That if that picks up, that's going to open up huge avenues for athletic trainers, because we kind of have a nice dynamic, because she's a PT and she can write that referral, and then we can submit to insurance. But I forget the exact amount of insurance companies that now will reimburse for athletic training, but it's pretty significant, at least in Wisconsin. And I think, like I said, I think if that picks up, that is going to be a game changer in the athletic training profession.
A lot more in the clinic setting for sure.
Yep, it'll help the clinics. But then again, I think the private practices, we're going to see a huge uptick in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Erica, do you have anything to add? I know that was a well thought out answer.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree with everything he was saying. Honestly, I do agree that that athletic trainers are going to be needed a lot more in the clinic setting, and I'm starting to see a little bit of that now in the Green Bay area, that they're not necessarily outsources to high school settings as much anymore, but used in the clinic for treatments. It'd be nice to see them doing more evaluations and that sort of thing. But right now it's kind of a more of an aid type position, just helping with treatments and like Trevor saying, physician extenders as well.
Yeah, and I think that's also athletic trainers got to stick up for themselves a little bit.
Prove what you got.
Yeah, that's the thing is you got it. You're taught it. You know what you're doing. It's a huge skill set. And when I hear that athletic trainers are kind of applying for rehab tech type jobs or aid jobs or scribe jobs, it's like, oh, you're worth so much more that I would hate to see the profession trend that way. Where I'd like to see people kind of be like, yeah, I'm capable of doing all of this. So I'd love to see the trend go up towards more.
All in the mindset.
Yeah. Well, that's all great answer. So our next one for you would be, what advice would you give yourself as a young athletic trainer?
You got anything? That's a good one. As a young Trevor. Oh God.
So many years ago.
Don't take things for granted. One of the biggest talking points that I wish I had taken advantage of earlier on in my career was always ask why. Everything you do, ask why. It was knocked into my head in my undergrad. We had a preceptor who I believe is still an AT there. Always ask us why. And it was it just annoyed the crap out of me at the time. I mean, I'm 20 years old being asked why, all this stuff when I just wanted to be taught. And I think that goes back to the early mindset is like, just teach me what I need to know so I can start my career, start my profession. And I think if you ask why of everything and start to understand the whys behind it all, it's going to propel you much quicker and make you a much better clinician. So if I could go back and shake my 20-year-old self, I would say, listen to him telling you to ask why and actually take it to heart and attribute or put it towards what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's huge. It's just figuring out everything in school is just kind of like word bombing. You just try to take it all in as much as you can and as a sponge, but there's so much thrown at you just to pass a boards exam. And that's great. Do all that studying and stuff on your own time. But then when you're at clinicals and you're talking to preceptors and or clinical instructors, just pick their brain about anything and everything, certain cases, and you get so much more out of those hands-on interactive experiences, I think from my standpoint anyways, than you do opening up a textbook, which is great. You got to pass the boards. It's wonderful, but get your hands dirty and get in on a case and get in with a patient, and don't just sit back and let everything go around you. Just be as interactive as you can with your learning.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Something that I've tried to definitely implement here in my graduate school, just asking why and really diving into those details. And hopefully, it's going to pay off one day, but it's just great to hear you guys emphasize that. So our next question for you would be, what has been the most influential resource that you have found in your career so far?
Influential resource. Well, mine was a colleague at Concordia. I'll give him a shout out, Dr. Darren Smith, Dr. D. He was the most influential to help me realize that you need to get away from get out of the textbook, take everything you learn, be specific with it, and understand that there's so much more out there. He kind of set me on my path for this way of using the body to kind of heal, to treat and heal itself. And then he sent me to a lot of resources. I think the biggest one, also from a movement standpoint, I mean, Kelly Starrett, is huge.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially with kind of the clientele we work with, all of his info and resources. But I think for me, probably those two, from a way I practice standpoint, those two people.
Oh yeah. I would say, yeah, other mentors and resources, not only in Green Bay area, but like Trevor was saying, from a movement standpoint, and people that have been doing this for years, like Mike Reynolds is another good one that we follow, and him quite a bit. Couple of professors that I've had in the past through ICE Physio, they're PTs that push out content all the time, and with continuing education try to be kind of above the line and always progressive and changing the old school ways of thinking. So, and that's the thing, is you always gotta, medicine is always changing, and so you gotta push yourself outside of your comfort zone and keep up with the times. That's what it comes down to.
Straight up. Straight up. Yeah. Always be a learner. You can never know enough. It's always changing.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, great resources there. I'm sure our viewers will definitely love the names and the shout out as well. So
I hope so.
our next one for you is, if you could change or eliminate one thing, whether that be a modality, a mindset, maybe a common practice that people have in the field of athletic training, what would that be?
Rest, ice, compression, elevate.
I was going to say the same thing.
Take it out of textbooks, take it off the websites, take it off of everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, that was a good timing.
Yeah.
That wasn't planned. That, Bryce.
Awesome. Oh, man, I can't tell you how many times we've had people like tell us they just stop doing activities just completely because doctors or other healthcare providers just said, just stop doing it and then you won't have your pain. Well, guess what? That usually doesn't work. I don't think I've ever met a person that's worked for.
Yeah.
So
and resting and hoping that along with an ice pack will take care of all your problems.
Yeah.
we could go on about this. we could go on about that. I hate that I still see that. I mean, I just can't believe it. Again, that older way of thinking. And like, if somebody's in a lot of pain, they want some numbness, like, sure, throw an ice bag on, but it ain't going to do anything.
It's not going to solve the actual problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah. I'll stop. I can keep going.
I can definitely see how your spouse business relationship is working out with
that. Yeah.
Because you're on the same page.
Yeah, that was neat. Cool.
So our last question for you would be, what does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
That's a good one. I mean, for me, it provides me the tools to help people be active and healthy without pain. I mean, that's the biggest. I mean, if you ask me what is the greatest thing about what we're doing is we're helping people live and stay in the activities they want to be a part of and the activities they love, whether it's in the gym or walking or just, playing catch with some of their kids. I mean, with the skill set that we have as athletic trainers and the ability to either get them out of pain or help them stay in those activities longer and healthier, that's what it's about. I mean, that is literally all that it's about is helping those people just stay healthy and stay active. I don't know what else. There's nothing else to say about it.
It's a rewarding profession to be in. And when it comes down to it, there's some things we take for granted until it becomes painful to do. And then, like we were talking about earlier, you just stop doing it. So, giving people their lives back, essentially, they weren't able to, sleep for a period of time or play on the ground with their grandkids again. And then all of a sudden they're able to do that and become, themselves again, essentially. I mean, that not only from a physical standpoint, but mentally and emotionally too. I mean, it really is, a comprehensive approach that we have the tools that we're able to help people wholly like that.
Yeah. And I think, just going off that, I was with somebody tonight who's been dealing with some issues and, we were able to get rid of it. And that look on their face, like they're expecting it, but it's like, wait, it was just there. Where'd it go? It's so satisfying. It's so gratifying. And they thank us, but it's them. We put a lot of ownership on them, and
Mm-hmm.
we're basically the guiding hand, and we have the tool set. So that's just, I hope people don't take that for granted as athletic training, that you have that capability.
Yeah, you can change people's lives.
Yeah, you really can.
I mean, that's a fantastic point and some great answers there. So I guess if you guys have anything else you want to share, feel free. Otherwise, we will kind of link your website. And I know you guys have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter pages, I believe.
Instagram and Facebook. I had to get rid of Twitter.
Okay.
I just had to get rid of Twitter for the time being. But yeah, our Facebook, I believe, is just at Movement Rehab. So it's MVMT Rehab. And I think our Instagram is MVMT, so movement.rehab. I'm pretty sure it's got that dot in between.
Okay.
But, yep,
yeah, we can link those below the video here. But otherwise, we at AT Chat want to thank you guys for the time, and sure our audience is gonna definitely enjoy hearing some of your points and stuff. So
yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was fun.